Hi boys and girls. So for our next mini topic, we are going to be looking at Scotland. And for the first lesson, we are going to look at Scotland's landscape and explore the physical features. I have a few exciting lessons coming up, but this lesson is basically an information lesson accompanied with a wee worksheet. The next lesson you will probably be a little bit excited about, and then we're going to share ideas, and it's going to allow for us all to work as a class and as a big group. So, excuse me, boys and girls, we just dropped something there. So, we need to do this first. So, Scotland's landscape is something that we're going to learn about. You should be able to describe the major characteristic features of Scotland's landscape and explain how these were formed. I can identify and describe the main features of Scotland's landscape. Right, so the physical features. The physical features of Scotland's landscape are natural features. They're not man-made, okay? Can you think of some natural features of the Scottish landscape? Now, this is just a thinking task, boys and girls. You can pause the video now. Okay, welcome back, boys and girls. So, some of ideas you may have come up with are islands, we have coastlines, we have rivers, we have lochs, hills, glens, mountains. Each of these physical features can be seen in Scotland's landscape. So I think Scotland's landscape is so beautiful. I love it. And we're very, very lucky to have it right on our doorstep. So we can divide Scotland's landscape into three areas, boys and girls. We've got the Highlands and Islands. We've got the Central Lowlands. And we've got the Southern Uplands. Okay? I don't know if my pen's working. Yes, it is. We are in the Central Lowlands, boys and girls. So let's look at the Highlands and Islands. The Highlands of Scotland have mountain ranges like the Grampians, the Cuillins and the Cairngorms. These mountains were carved by the movement of glaciers during the last ice age. Now, we're going to learn a little bit about that later, boys and girls. We're going to do a research project on how our landscape was formed. And that's the tool that we're going to use for that. It's quite exciting. In the west of the Highlands, there are mountains that can be up to 1,200 metres high. The summit of Ben Nevis, the highest mountain in Britain, is 1,344 metres above sea level. Fossils have been found in the northwest Highlands from 750 million years ago. These are some of the oldest mountain ranges in the world, boys and girls. That's amazing, isn't it? Just to think we've got all that in Scotland. I always remember visiting Ben Nevis. I had a wee caravan holiday when I was little. And I always remember the clouds at the top of Ben Nevis. And I remember thinking to myself, I'd like to climb up there and catch those clouds in a jar. It was beautiful. Highlands and Islands. Highland mountains are popular in summer and winter with walkers, climbers and skiers. They are beautiful, but they can be very dangerous when the weather changes. Yeah, you've got to be very careful when you're climbing. A lot of people have taken to mountain climbing, boys and girls, just because of lockdown. And I think there is an increase of people that are needing rescued and whatnot. So if you are doing that, we need to be a lot more careful. The Cuillin Mountains are found on the Isle of Skye. They are known as the Red Cuillin and the Black Cuillin. The Red Cuillin in the east are soft, rounded, whereas the black in the west are sharp and jagged. That's interesting. I didn't know that. The Highland Boundary Fault is a break in the rock of the Earth's crust. Okay? This runs across Scotland from an area around Helensburgh in the southwest to around Stonehaven in the northeast. This fault line naturally divides the mountains in the north from the lowlands in the south. As well as mountains, there are lots of valleys in the Highlands called glens. The Great Glen is another fault line in the Earth's crust and runs from the west coast of Scotland to the north. The Great Glen is a natural travelling route in the mountains area. The Caledonian Canal follows a route through the lochs and roads. The lochs in the Great Glen include Loch Ness and Loch Lynn. We've got islands. The Shetland Islands are the most northerly part of Scotland and are actually nearer to Norway than they are to the Scottish mainland. There are very few trees in Shetland due to the high winds and weather. The island is most famous for Shetland ponies. The main town in Shetland is Lerwick, and the highest point in Shetland is Ronas Hill at 450mm. Scotland has 790 islands. However, only around 95 of these have people living on them. That's pretty amazing, isn't it, boys and girls, to think that we have all those islands and, they're not lived on. I wonder what fabulous things you would find on those. The islands. The Outer Hebrides are a group of islands off the northwest coast of mainland Scotland. The Inner Hebrides are a group of islands between the coast of mainland and the Outer Hebrides. Okay, so I'll let you, if you want to read that, you can pause that. The Central Lowlands are between the Highlands and the Northern Uplands. They stretch from the Firth of Forth on the east coast to the Firth of Clyde on the west coast. Scotland's capital, Edinburgh, and Scotland's largest city, Glasgow, are found on either side of the Central Lowlands. Over half of Scotland's population live in this area. That's pretty amazing to think over half the population are just in that small wee area there. I wonder why. I wonder why the top part of Scotland is not as inhabited as the Central Lowlands. I wonder if there's a reason for that. If you can find a reason for that, or if you think you know the reason for that, let me know. Southern uplands are the most southerly part of Scotland, and these lands border England. Okay? The coastlines, the Highland and Islands and Central Lowlands and the Southern Uplands all have coastlines, rivers and lochs. Okay? So depending on the type of rock at the coastline, it could be worn away or eroded over a period of time, and rocks like clay and sandstone are easily worn or eroded by rainfall. Harder rocks like granite or slate take longer to erode. So erode means just like basically wear away. You can find sea arches near Bowfiddle. So boys and girls, I think what we're going to look at like landmarks at some point as well, but that's quite a nice introduction to some interesting attractions in Scotland that people probably might want to visit. So deposition, our coastlines, and on our coastlines you might see deposition, and deposition means material is being deposited on a coastline rather than being away. So the sand and pebbles we see on these beaches may come from cliffs and rocks that have been eroded. We've got rivers. The river starts at the high in the mountains and flows down over the land, and it might reach a loch or the sea. So rivers begin underground or by rain falling or snow melting on the mountain tops. The River Tay, which should sound familiar to you, is the longest river in Scotland, believe it or not. The River Spey is the fastest flowing, so we've got fastest flowing, and the River Dee and the River Don both run through the city of Aberdeen on the east coast. We've got Loch Ness and Loch Lomond. You've probably heard of Loch Ness for the Loch Ness Monster. A loch is a glen filled with water. So sea lochs are open to the sea. Loch Ness is one of the most famous lochs because of the monster. And Loch Ness holds more water than all of the lakes in England and Wales put together. That's pretty amazing fact. So there's plenty of room for a Nessie to swim about, So that's quite interesting, isn't it? And Loch Lomond, you've probably heard that in the song. Okay, we have some volcanoes in Scotland, and we have our very own Low Hill. But Scotland used to have active volcanoes all over the place, and the remains of volcanic activity can still be found across Scotland. The reason for that, boys and girls, is Scotland used to not be positioned where we are in the earth today. Many years ago, we used to be nearer to the equator, and because we were nearer to that, it would lead to volcanic activity. So we have Arthur's Seat. That's an extinct volcano. It lasted up to 342 million years ago. and that's in Edinburgh. You've got Castle Rock in Edinburgh, and it's a volcanic plug which Edinburgh Castle sits. So where Edinburgh Castle sits, that's a volcanic plug. And it's made with magma that hardens inside the vent of an active volcano. And then you've got the Black Cullen is a long mountain range found on the Isle of Skye, and it has many peaks. It was formed as a result of volcanic activity. So it's quite interesting. Then we've also got the Law Hill that we know about. So that takes us to the end of our little activity. There will be a worksheet. I'm sorry I just talked to you through that. It was just a wee fact-finding video, just listening to some information. What we are going to do is do a little worksheet to see what facts you can remember, and it'll be attached to this lesson, boys and girls. And then the next lesson after this, I think you will find very interesting. Okay, off you go to do the worksheet. I'll speak to you soon.